The current does not reveal it. It erases it. A shadow glides across the seafloor, not the decisive silhouette of a hunter, but a slow, uncertain ripple of drifting debris. A predator passes within a body length, its vision tuned by millions of years to lock onto muscle, symmetry, and motion that resolves into prey. It scans, pauses, and moves on. What it fails to register is not absence, but overload. The water is filled with fragments of kelp, torn leaves, swaying ribbons of plant tissue, all shifting under the same invisible hand of the tide. Somewhere within that chaos, a single organism hangs suspended, breathing, watching, feeding. The leafy sea dragon does not hide by becoming still. It hides by becoming incomprehensible. Its form appears ornamental, almost excessive, a baroque exaggeration of a fish's outline. From its elongated body extend dozens of leaf-like appendages, delicate and branching, each one shaped to mimic the torn edges of drifting algae. These structures do not generate thrust. They do not stabilize or propel in any conventional hydrodynamic sense. Instead, they act as visual disruptors, fracturing the continuity of the animal's silhouette. In environments where predators rely on pattern recognition, the difference between life and death is not speed, but classification. A streamlined fish can be identified, tracked, and intercepted. A drifting fragment of vegetation is ignored. The leafy sea dragon exists precisely at that boundary, exploiting the neurological constraints of its observers. The mechanics of this deception extend far beyond simple resemblance. The animal's true locomotion is almost invisible, driven by tiny, translucent fins located along its neck and near the tail. These fins oscillate rapidly, generating subtle currents that move the body forward without disturbing the surrounding water in ways that would betray its presence. Unlike the explosive acceleration seen in many fish, this motion is continuous and understated, synchronized with the ambient drift of the habitat. The result is a movement pattern that lacks the abrupt cues predators use to trigger pursuit. It does not dart. It does not flee. It becomes part of the background flow. Yet the illusion is not passive. It is actively maintained through a complex interaction between morphology, behavior, and environment. The leafy appendages themselves are not rigid decorations. They flex and respond to microcurrents, amplifying the illusion of plant matter. This creates a form of dynamic camouflage, where the animal does not simply match its surroundings, but participates in their motion. In neurological terms, it exploits a phenomenon known as motion coherence detection. Predators are highly sensitive to objects that move independently from their background. By synchronizing its movement with the surrounding water, the sea dragon effectively dissolves into the noise, reducing the likelihood that it will be segmented as a distinct object. The ecological twist emerges when this apparent fragility reveals itself as a strategic advantage. In a system dominated by faster, more aggressive predators, conventional defenses such as armor, venom, or speed come with metabolic costs. They require energy, impose constraints on behavior, and often signal presence through movement or chemical cues. The leafy sea dragon abandons these strategies entirely. It invests not in confrontation, but in misdirection. Its survival depends on remaining unrecognized, not on resisting attack. This shifts the evolutionary pressure from physical robustness to sensory deception. However, this specialization introduces a different kind of vulnerability. The sea dragon's dependence on visual camouflage ties it to specific habitats where the illusion remains effective. In seagrass meadows and kelp forests, the density and complexity of vegetation provide the necessary background. But when environmental conditions change, when storms strip away vegetation, when human activity fragments habitats, or when seasonal shifts alter the structure of the ecosystem, the illusion begins to break down. In open water, the same appendages that once concealed the animal become liabilities, outlining its form against a simpler background. What was once invisibility becomes exposure. This dependency creates an intricate relationship between the sea dragon and its ecosystem, one that extends beyond predator-prey dynamics into the realm of habitat engineering. Seagrass beds are not static environments. They are shaped by currents, sediment deposition, and the activities of other organisms. Grazers trim vegetation, storms redistribute plant matter, and nutrient cycles influence growth patterns. The effectiveness of the sea dragon's camouflage is therefore linked to these broader ecological processes. It is not merely adapted to a habitat, it is embedded within a dynamic system that must remain within certain parameters for its strategy to function. The feeding behavior of the leafy sea dragon further illustrates this integration. It does not chase prey. It does not ambush with speed. Instead, it relies on proximity and subtlety. Small crustaceans, such as misread shrimp, drift within the same currents that carry the sea dragon. Using its elongated snout, the animal creates a rapid suction force, drawing prey into its mouth with minimal disturbance. This feeding method aligns with its overall strategy of invisibility. There is no sudden burst of motion, no chase that would reveal its presence. The act of predation is folded into the background flow, indistinguishable from the random interactions of particles in the water. Here, the narrative reverses again. The sea dragon, which appears passive and defenseless, is in fact an active participant in shaping its immediate environment. By consuming drifting organisms, it influences local prey populations and contributes to the energy flow within the ecosystem. Its role is subtle but significant, operating at a scale that often escapes casual observation. It is not a dominant predator, but it is not irrelevant. It occupies a niche defined by precision and restraint, where survival depends on the ability to exploit microhabitats and transient opportunities. Reproduction introduces yet another layer of complexity. In a reversal of typical reproductive roles, it is the male that carries the eggs. Females deposit their eggs onto a specialized brood patch located on the underside of the male's tail. This structure provides oxygenation and protection, allowing the developing embryos to remain attached until they hatch. The male becomes a mobile nursery, integrating reproductive investment into his already delicate balance of camouflage and survival. Carrying eggs increases his visibility and alters his hydrodynamics, yet the strategy persists, suggesting that the benefits outweigh the risks. This reproductive system also reflects a broader theme in the sea dragon's biology: the redistribution of function. Just as its appendages abandon locomotion in favor of visual disruption, its reproductive roles shift in ways that challenge conventional expectations. These adaptations are not arbitrary. They are responses to specific ecological pressures, each one representing a trade-off that has been refined over evolutionary time. The sea dragon does not optimize for a single trait. It balances multiple constraints, achieving a form of equilibrium that appears precarious, but is in fact highly specialized. At the sensory level, the sea dragon operates within a world defined by limited perception. Its eyes move independently, scanning for both predators and prey, but its reliance on visual cues is constrained by the same complexity that enables its camouflage. In dense vegetation, visibility is reduced and signals are fragmented. This creates an environment where certainty is rare and decisions must be made based on incomplete information. The sea dragon's strategy acknowledges this uncertainty. It does not attempt to dominate its sensory environment. It blends into it, becoming one more ambiguous element in a field of shifting patterns. The broader implication is that survival in such systems is not always about clarity or dominance. It is about ambiguity, about existing in a state where one's identity as an organism is continuously obscured. The leafy sea dragon embodies this principle to an extreme degree. It is an animal that has, in a sense, abandoned the need to be recognized. Its success lies in its ability to evade categorization, to exist as something that predators cannot easily define. This challenges a common assumption about evolution, that it drives organisms toward greater efficiency, speed, or power. In the case of the sea dragon, evolution has favored complexity, fragility, and illusion. These traits may appear inefficient when viewed through a traditional lens, but they are precisely what allow the animal to navigate its ecological niche. Efficiency in this context is not about maximizing output. It is about minimizing detection. As the current shifts and the light filters through the water, the sea dragon continues its slow, deliberate drift. It is neither fully plant nor fully animal in appearance, occupying a space between categories. To the untrained eye, it may go unnoticed entirely, dismissed as another fragment of the seafloor's living tapestry. Yet within that ambiguity lies a highly refined strategy, one that transforms vulnerability into advantage. The final reversal is perhaps the most profound. The leafy sea dragon does not simply hide within its environment, it becomes a measure of that environment's complexity. Its presence indicates a system rich enough to support such specialized forms of life, yet fragile enough that small changes can have disproportionate effects. It is both a product and a signal of ecological balance, a living indicator of the intricate relationships that define its world. In this sense, the sea dragon is not just an organism. It is a process, a convergence of physics, biology, and perception. It reveals that survival can be achieved not by confronting the forces of nature, but by aligning with them so completely that distinction becomes impossible. The current does not carry it. It erases it, and in that erasure, the leafy sea dragon finds its strength. The strike happens faster than recognition, a collapse of space rather than a movement through it. One moment the water holds only debris, algae strands, a lump of encrusted sponge, the slow drift of particulate life, and in the next, a fish ceases to exist. There is no chase, no visible acceleration, no predator entering the frame. Instead, the environment itself appears to inhale. A pressure gradient forms and vanishes within a fraction of a second, pulling the prey across a boundary it never perceived. By the time the surrounding water settles, the illusion reassembles. The reef looks unchanged. The predator is once again just a piece of rot. The frogfish does not resemble a hunter because resemblance would betray it. Its body is compact and distorted, wrapped in layers of textured skin that mimic the biological noise of the reef, sponges, tunicates, algal growth, and decaying coral fragments. Unlike streamlined fish built for continuous swimming, the frogfish abandons hydrodynamic efficiency entirely. Its skin develops dermal appendages that break up its outline, creating microshadows and irregular contours that disrupt visual processing in predators and prey alike. This is not camouflage as background matching alone, it is camouflage as perceptual sabotage. The animal does not aim to look like something specific. It aims to look like nothing coherent at all. The reef itself is a visual overload system, a dense matrix of overlapping forms, colors, and movements. Predators operating here rely heavily on pattern recognition and motion detection to isolate targets. The frogfish exploits a critical limitation in this system: the brain's need to simplify complexity. Faced with too many competing signals, the visual system filters out anomalies that do not resolve into familiar shapes. The frogfish becomes one of those anomalies, a statistical outlier dismissed as irrelevant. It is not invisible in a literal sense. It is invisible in the cognitive sense, filtered out before it can be interpreted as prey or threat. Yet this passive disguise is only half of the strategy. The frogfish is not merely hiding. It is actively manipulating the behavior of other organisms through one of the most specialized hunting tools in the ocean: a modified dorsal spine that functions as a lure. This structure, known as the elysium, extends forward like a fishing rod, ending in a fleshy appendage called the esker. The esker mimics small prey items, worms, shrimp, or fish larvae, depending on the species and environment. It moves with subtle, deliberate motions, imitating the erratic patterns of living organisms. This is not random twitching. It is behavioral mimicry tuned to the sensory biases of its targets. The ecological twist emerges in the interaction between stillness and deception. The frogfish, which appears inert and lifeless, becomes the most dynamic element in its immediate environment through the movement of its lure. Prey organisms, drawn by the promise of an easy meal, approach what they perceive as an isolated food source. In doing so, they cross an invisible threshold, entering the strike zone of a predator that has not revealed itself through conventional cues. The frogfish does not chase because it does not need to. It inverts the predator-prey relationship, transforming the act of feeding into a form of recruitment. The prey comes to the predator, guided by false information. The mechanics of the strike itself are a study in extreme physiological adaptation. When the frogfish attacks, it expands its mouth cavity with extraordinary speed, creating a powerful suction force. This is achieved through a coordinated movement of the jaw, hyoid apparatus, and surrounding musculature, which rapidly increases the volume of the oral cavity. The resulting pressure differential pulls water and anything suspended within it into the mouth. The entire process occurs in a timescale measured in milliseconds, making it one of the fastest feeding mechanisms among vertebrates. Importantly, this speed is not about pursuit. It is about eliminating the temporal window in which the prey could react. This feeding strategy is tightly linked to metabolic constraints. The frogfish is not built for sustained activity. Its musculature and body plan favor short bursts of energy over continuous motion. By adopting an ambush strategy, it minimizes energy expenditure while maximizing feeding efficiency. This is a classic example of an evolutionary trade-off, where the loss of mobility is compensated by the development of highly specialized predatory tools. In environments where food availability can be unpredictable, conserving energy becomes as important as acquiring it. The frogfish embodies this principle, operating as a low-energy predator in a high-complexity system. However, this specialization introduces a paradox. The very traits that make the frogfish an effective predator also make it vulnerable. Its reliance on camouflage and ambush limits its ability to respond to changes in the environment. If displaced from its preferred habitat, if currents shift, if the reef structure is altered, or if it is exposed in open water, it lacks the speed and endurance to escape threats. Larger predators that rely on different sensory modalities, such as chemical detection or close-range inspection, can bypass its visual deception. In these moments, the frogfish's grotesque stillness becomes a liability, leaving it exposed in a system where mobility often determines survival. This vulnerability is mitigated by another layer of adaptation: behavioral flexibility in habitat selection. Frogfish are known to inhabit a wide range of microhabitats within the reef, from sponge-covered substrates to coral rubble and algal patches. Each individual can adjust its coloration and texture over time, a process mediated by specialized pigment cells and skin modifications. This is not instantaneous color change like that seen in cephalopods, but a slower developmental adjustment that aligns the animal's appearance with its surroundings. The frogfish does not simply occupy a habitat. It becomes an extension of it, integrating its body into the structural and visual fabric of the reef. The narrative reverses again when considering the frogfish's role within the broader ecosystem. While it is an efficient predator of small fish and crustaceans, it also serves as prey for larger organisms. Its presence influences the behavior of its prey species, creating localized zones of increased caution and altered movement patterns. These effects can cascade through the food web, subtly shaping the distribution and interactions of multiple species. The frogfish, though solitary and seemingly insignificant, participates in a network of ecological relationships that extend far beyond its immediate actions. Reproduction adds yet another dimension to its life history. Many frogfish species exhibit a form of reproductive strategy that involves the release of eggs in a gelatinous mass, which is carried by currents. This dispersal mechanism reduces the risk of predation on the eggs and allows offspring to colonize new areas. However, it also introduces uncertainty, as the larvae must navigate a complex and often hostile environment before settling into a suitable habitat. The transition from a free-swimming larval stage to a sedentary adult involves significant morphological and behavioral changes, reflecting the shifting demands of different life stages. At the sensory level, the frogfish operates within a constrained perceptual world. Its vision is adapted to detect movement and contrast at close range, sufficient for its ambush strategy but limited in scope. This reinforces its reliance on deception and proximity rather than long-range detection. The lure becomes an extension of its sensory system, effectively outsourcing the task of locating prey. By attracting organisms into its immediate vicinity, the frogfish reduces the need for active searching, turning the environment into a passive delivery system. The broader implication of the frogfish's strategy is a redefinition of what it means to be a predator. Traditional models emphasize speed, strength, and direct engagement. The frogfish rejects these attributes, replacing them with stillness, ambiguity, and manipulation. It does not dominate its environment through force. It reshapes the informational landscape, altering how other organisms perceive and respond to their surroundings. In doing so, it reveals a different axis of evolutionary success, one based on control over perception, rather than physical interaction. As the reef continues its constant flux of movement and transformation, the frogfish remains anchored within its chosen patch of chaos. It does not need to move because the world moves around it. Currents bring food, organisms bring themselves, and the visual noise of the environment provides continuous cover. It is a predator defined not by action, but by timing and deception, existing in a state of readiness that blurs the line between organism and object. The final reversal is embedded in its grotesque appearance. What seems like a failure of form, a body that violates the expectations of symmetry, grace, and efficiency, is in fact a precise adaptation to a specific ecological niche. The frogfish is not poorly designed. It is hyper-specialized, its form sculpted by the demands of a system where recognition equals risk. By abandoning the conventional traits of a fish, it gains access to a strategy that few others can exploit. In this way, the frogfish becomes more than a predator. It becomes a demonstration of how evolution can operate through subtraction as much as addition, stripping away unnecessary functions and exaggerating others to create a form that is both alien and effective. It exists at the intersection of biology and perception, a living trap that turns the complexity of the reef into a weapon. And in that moment of sudden, silent collapse, when the water itself seems to consume life, it reveals the true nature of its design, not a creature that hunts, but a system that waits for the world to make a mistake. The current tightens without warning, turning a gentle drift into a lateral surge that rips across the meadow with enough force to peel weak organisms from their anchors. Blades of seagrass flatten, sediment lifts into a blinding haze, and anything not fixed to the substrate is swept into open water where predators patrol the margins like waiting blades. In the middle of that hydraulic violence, something impossibly delicate does not flee. It does not even bend in the way a flexible swimmer might. Instead, a curled tail tightens its grip with a slow, deliberate contraction, locking around a single strand of vegetation with a force that seems out of proportion to the body that generates it. The seahorse does not resist the current through strength. It nullifies it through attachment, converting a dynamic fluid environment into a fixed reference point from which survival becomes possible. The seahorse's upright posture appears to violate the fundamental logic of aquatic design, where streamlining and horizontal alignment reduce drag and enable efficient propulsion. Here, however, the vertical orientation is not a mistake, but a redefinition of function. In seagrass meadows and branching coral habitats, vertical structures dominate the visual field. Predators scanning these environments are tuned to detect horizontal movement patterns that signal typical fish locomotion. The seahorse, aligned with the dominant axis of its habitat, becomes a continuation of that structure rather than a deviation from it. Its body does not cut through the water. It interrupts the expectation of what movement should look like, creating a form that is processed as background rather than as prey. This perceptual manipulation is reinforced by the seahorse's integumentary system. Its skin can develop filamentous projections and subtle textural variations that mimic the epiphytes and algae growing on seagrass blades. Pigment cells allow for gradual color adjustments, aligning the animal's appearance with local conditions over time. This is not the rapid, dynamic camouflage seen in cephalopods, but a slower, more integrated adaptation that binds the seahorse to its immediate environment. It does not chase optimal conditions. It becomes locally optimized, a living extension of the habitat that sustains it. The ecological twist emerges in the relationship between fragility and control. The seahorse appears vulnerable, its small fins fluttering with an almost insect-like motion that seems insufficient to counter even mild currents. Yet this apparent weakness is a deliberate abandonment of energy-intensive locomotion. By anchoring itself with a prehensile tail, the seahorse offloads the cost of station keeping to the physical structure of the environment. The tail functions as a biological clamp, composed of segmented bony plates and specialized musculature that allow for both flexibility and strength. Once attached, the seahorse can maintain position with minimal metabolic expenditure, conserving energy for feeding and reproduction. Feeding itself is an exercise in precision rather than pursuit. The seahorse's elongated snout acts as a narrow tube through which water is rapidly drawn, creating a focused suction force. This mechanism is highly efficient for capturing small, slow-moving prey, such as copepods and other planktonic organisms that drift within reach. Unlike larger predators that rely on speed and force, the seahorse operates at a micro scale, exploiting the constant flux of tiny organisms carried by currents. Each feeding event is a calculated interaction, where timing and proximity replace the need for chase. The seahorse does not hunt in the traditional sense. It harvests the flow of life moving past it. This strategy is tightly linked to the physics of the environment. In boundary layers close to seagrass surfaces, water flow is reduced, creating microhabitats where small organisms accumulate. The seahorse positions itself within these zones, effectively tapping into a continuous supply of prey. Its ability to remain stationary allows it to exploit these localized concentrations without expending energy on movement. In this way, the seahorse becomes a node within the fluid dynamics of its habitat, integrating biological function with physical processes. However, this specialization introduces a different kind of risk. The seahorse's dependence on specific structures for anchorage makes it highly sensitive to habitat degradation. Seagrass meadows are among the most productive yet vulnerable ecosystems in the ocean, affected by changes in water quality, sedimentation, and human activity. When these habitats decline, the seahorse loses not only its camouflage, but also its means of resisting currents and accessing food. The very traits that define its success become liabilities in altered conditions, revealing the narrow margins within which such specialization can operate. The narrative reverses again when considering the seahorse's role in reproduction, which challenges conventional expectations of parental investment. In a system where many fish release vast numbers of eggs with minimal care, the seahorse adopts a strategy of intensive parental involvement. It is the male that carries the developing embryos within a specialized brood pouch. This structure provides protection, oxygenation, and osmoregulation, effectively functioning as a controlled environment for embryonic development. The male becomes a living incubator, absorbing the costs and risks associated with reproduction. This inversion of roles is not merely a curiosity, it reflects a deeper ecological logic. By centralizing reproductive investment within the male, the species can regulate the number of offspring more precisely, increasing the likelihood of survival in a complex and variable environment. The brood pouch allows for the exchange of nutrients and waste, creating conditions that buffer the embryos against external fluctuations. This is a significant departure from the typical broadcast spawning strategy of many marine organisms, representing a shift toward quality over quantity. Yet this investment comes with trade-offs. Carrying embryos increases the male's energy demands and may affect mobility and camouflage. It becomes a more conspicuous target in a system where detection often leads to predation. The seahorse's survival strategy must therefore accommodate these additional constraints, balancing the need for reproduction with the imperative of remaining undetected. This balance is achieved through a combination of behavioral adjustments and the continued reliance on habitat complexity for concealment. At the sensory level, the seahorse operates within a world defined by precision and limitation. Its eyes can move independently, scanning the environment for both prey and predators. This binocular flexibility allows for a wide field of view without requiring body movement, which would disrupt its camouflage. The seahorse does not rely on speed or strength to interpret its surroundings. It relies on stillness and selective attention, filtering the constant flow of information to identify relevant cues. This sensory strategy aligns with its overall ecological role, emphasizing efficiency and subtlety over dominance. The broader implication of the seahorse's design is a redefinition of competitive success in marine environments. Traditional metrics such as speed, size, and aggression are not universally advantageous. In habitats characterized by structural complexity and variable conditions, alternative strategies can emerge, favoring organisms that exploit niches overlooked by more conventional competitors. The seahorse exemplifies this principle, occupying a space where precision, attachment, and deception provide a viable path to survival. As the current begins to ease, the seagrass blades slowly return to their upright positions, and the suspended sediment settles back onto the substrate. The seahorse loosens its grip, adjusting its position with small, controlled movements of its dorsal fin. It does not leave its anchor point entirely. Instead, it transitions from resistance to participation, allowing the gentle flow to bring new opportunities within reach. This shift from tension to fluidity reflects a broader pattern in its behavior, where survival depends on the ability to modulate interaction with the environment, rather than to overpower it. The final reversal lies in the perception of fragility. The seahorse appears delicate, almost ornamental, a creature that seems ill-suited to the demands of a dynamic and often hostile environment. Yet this appearance is a byproduct of a highly specialized system that prioritizes efficiency, integration, and control. Its body, assembled from seemingly incongruent parts, functions as a cohesive unit adapted to a specific ecological context. Each feature, the curled tail, the upright posture, the tubular snout, the armored plates, contributes to a strategy that transforms apparent weakness into resilience. In this way, the seahorse becomes a testament to the diversity of evolutionary solutions. It demonstrates that survival is not confined to a single set of traits or behaviors, but can emerge from a wide range of adaptations shaped by local conditions and constraints. The seahorse does not conform to the expectations of what a fish should be. It redefines those expectations, revealing that success in the natural world often lies in the ability to operate outside conventional frameworks. As the meadow resumes its quiet oscillation, the seahorse remains, a fixed point within a shifting system. It is neither fully passive nor actively dominant, existing instead in a state of controlled engagement with its environment. It does not fight the current, nor does it surrender to it. It anchors, observes, and feeds, integrating itself into the rhythms of the ecosystem. In doing so, it reveals a form of strength that is not immediately visible, a strength rooted in specialization and the precise alignment of form and function. The seahorse does not need to look powerful to be effective. It only needs to function within the narrow parameters that define its world. And within those parameters, it is not a fragile anomaly, but a highly tuned organism, capable of navigating complexity through a combination of attachment, perception, and subtle manipulation of its surroundings. The sand does not move, and then it does, because the sand has grown a pulse. A hunting fish angles downward, its eyes locking onto what appears to be a faint shimmer against the seafloor, a subtle contrast that resolves into potential prey. The brain commits to the classification in less than a heartbeat. A strike is prepared. Muscles tense. The distance collapses, and at the exact threshold where intention becomes action, the target disappears, not by fleeing, but by becoming the ground itself so completely that the signal vanishes from perception. What remains is a uniform field of grains, shadows, and light scatter. The predator hesitates for a fraction of a second too long. In that fraction, the advantage flips. The hunter loses its target, and the target has already begun to hunt. The cuttlefish exists in a visual world so information-dense that survival depends not on hiding in the background, but on controlling it. Its skin is not a passive covering. It is an active display system composed of multiple layers of specialized cells that operate in coordinated sequences. Chromatophores expand and contract to reveal pigments, iridophores reflect specific wavelengths of light, and leucophores scatter ambient illumination to match brightness and texture. Together, these systems allow the cuttlefish to manipulate contrast, pattern, and polarization in real time. The effect is not simple camouflage. It is dynamic scene integration, where the animal continuously recalculates its appearance to align with the shifting conditions of light, substrate, and observer perspective. This control is not merely aesthetic. It is neurological. The cuttlefish's brain processes visual information with a speed and precision that allows it to respond to environmental changes almost instantaneously. Unlike many animals that rely on pre-programmed responses, the cuttlefish can generate complex patterns that correspond to specific contexts. It can produce disruptive coloration to break up its outline, uniform patterns to blend with sand, or high-contrast displays to signal warning or aggression. Each pattern is a decision, a calculated output based on incoming sensory data. The ecological twist emerges when this capacity for invisibility transforms into a tool for manipulation. The cuttlefish does not simply avoid detection. It actively shapes the behavior of other organisms through visual signaling. When hunting, it can deploy what appears to be a hypnotic display, rapid, rhythmic changes in color and pattern that draw the attention of prey. Small fish and crustaceans, instead of fleeing, become momentarily disoriented, their neural processing overwhelmed by the shifting stimuli. In that moment of confusion, the cuttlefish closes the distance with a sudden extension of its feeding tentacles, capturing prey before the signal resolves into danger. This is not an accident of evolution. It is a form of sensory exploitation, where the predator taps into the perceptual biases of its prey. Many small marine organisms are highly sensitive to movement and contrast, using these cues to detect predators and food. By presenting a rapidly changing visual field, the cuttlefish disrupts these detection systems, effectively jamming the neural circuits that would normally trigger escape. The prey is not simply unaware, it is actively misled, its sensory processing hijacked by a signal it cannot interpret correctly. Yet the same system that enables such precise control also imposes constraints. The cuttlefish's reliance on visual information means that its effectiveness is tied to lighting conditions and habitat structure. In low visibility environments, where turbidity or darkness reduces the effectiveness of visual signals, its primary advantage diminishes. This creates a dependency on specific ecological niches, where light, substrate, and observer interactions align to support its strategy. The cuttlefish is not universally dominant. It is highly specialized, thriving in conditions that allow its unique abilities to function at full capacity. The narrative reverses again when considering the cuttlefish's role as prey. Despite its advanced camouflage and behavioral flexibility, it is hunted by a range of predators, including fish, marine mammals, and birds. In these encounters, the cuttlefish must transition rapidly from invisibility to escape. Its body is equipped for this shift through a dual-mode locomotion system. The broad fin that runs along its mantle allows for slow, controlled movement, maintaining stability and precision. But when threatened, it can engage a jet propulsion system, expelling water through a siphon to generate rapid bursts of speed. This transition is not merely mechanical, it is integrated with its visual system. As the cuttlefish initiates escape, it can simultaneously release a cloud of ink, creating a temporary visual barrier. In some cases, this ink forms a pseudomorph, a shape that resembles the cuttlefish itself, further confusing the predator. The animal then alters its coloration to match the new background, effectively disappearing into a different part of the environment. This sequence of actions, distraction, displacement, and disguise, demonstrates a layered defense strategy that operates across multiple sensory channels. The cuttlebone, an internal structure unique to cuttlefish, adds another dimension to its biology. This porous, calcified structure provides buoyancy control, allowing the animal to maintain neutral density in the water column. By adjusting the gas and fluid within the cuttlebone, the cuttlefish can fine-tune its position without expending significant energy. This capability is crucial for both hunting and evasion, enabling the animal to hover in place or move vertically with minimal effort. It is a solution to the problem of stability in a fluid environment, allowing the cuttlefish to remain poised for action without constant movement. At the sensory level, the cuttlefish operates with a level of sophistication that blurs the line between instinct and cognition. Its large, forward-facing eyes provide depth perception and a wide field of view, while its neural architecture supports complex behaviors such as learning and memory. It can adjust its responses based on past experiences, refining its strategies over time. This capacity for adaptation is particularly important in environments where conditions and interactions can change rapidly, requiring flexible and context-dependent behavior. The broader ecological implications of the cuttlefish's abilities extend beyond individual interactions. By influencing the behavior of both predators and prey, it contributes to the dynamic balance of its ecosystem. Its hunting strategies affect the distribution and abundance of smaller organisms, while its role as prey supports higher trophic levels. These interactions create feedback loops that shape the structure and function of the marine community, illustrating the interconnected nature of ecological systems. Reproduction introduces yet another layer of complexity. Cuttlefish engage in elaborate mating displays, using their color-changing abilities to signal fitness and intention. Males may adopt different patterns to attract females or to deter rivals, creating a visual communication system that operates alongside their camouflage and hunting functions. In some cases, males can even display different patterns on each side of their body simultaneously, signaling to a female on one side while deceiving a rival male on the other. This ability to partition visual information adds a new dimension to their behavioral repertoire, demonstrating a level of control that extends beyond simple survival. The final reversal lies in the perception of the cuttlefish as a creature defined by its ability to disappear. While invisibility is a key component of its strategy, it is not the end goal. The cuttlefish is not merely avoiding detection. It is actively managing how it is perceived, using its body as a medium for communication, deception, and control. Its skin becomes a language, its movements a series of calculated expressions that influence the behavior of others. In this sense, the cuttlefish is not just an organism adapting to its environment. It is an active participant in shaping that environment through the manipulation of information. It operates at the intersection of biology and perception, where survival depends on the ability to control not only physical interactions, but also the flow of sensory data between organisms. As the light shifts and the patterns on its skin settle into a new configuration, the cuttlefish resumes its quiet hover above the substrate. It is once again indistinguishable from the background, a seamless part of the scene. Yet within that stillness lies a system of remarkable complexity, a living interface that continuously interprets and responds to the world around it. The cuttlefish does not have a single identity because it does not need one. It exists as a series of potential states, each one activated in response to specific conditions. In a world where recognition often determines fate, the ability to redefine oneself becomes the ultimate advantage. And in that constant redefinition, the cuttlefish reveals a form of intelligence that is as much about perception as it is about action, a reminder that in the ocean, survival is often a matter of controlling what others think they see. The strike is almost invisible, a ripple that tightens and vanishes before the reef registers what has changed. A fish flicks once, its body stiffening as if the water itself has turned hostile, and then the movement stops entirely. There is no prolonged struggle, no visible wound, no tearing force. Only a transfer, chemical, silent, irreversible. The predator that delivered it does not linger in dominance. It drifts forward, its body moving with a slow, deliberate grace that seems at odds with the violence it has just unleashed. It looks like something that should not belong here, a shape borrowed from land, a lineage that once crawled across dry ground now threading itself through coral corridors. And yet in this moment, it is not the intruder. It is the system working exactly as designed. Sea snakes occupy a biological contradiction that challenges the visual grammar of the ocean. In a realm dominated by streamlined bodies, lateral fins, and gill-driven respiration, they retain the elongated, limbless form of terrestrial reptiles. Their scales are reduced and often smooth, their bodies cylindrical but laterally compressed toward the tail, creating a paddle-like structure that generates thrust in a medium far denser than air. This is not a perfect hydrodynamic solution. It is a compromise, an inherited architecture modified to function within a new set of physical constraints. The result is a movement pattern that appears fluid but fundamentally different from that of fish, a side-to-side undulation that translates terrestrial locomotion into aquatic propulsion. The deeper adaptation lies not in shape alone, but in the integration of physiology with environment. Sea snakes breathe air, yet they spend the majority of their lives submerged. Their lungs are elongated, extending through much of the body cavity, allowing for efficient oxygen storage and buoyancy control. Some species can supplement this system through cutaneous respiration, absorbing a portion of their oxygen directly through the skin. This dual strategy allows them to remain underwater for extended periods, reducing the frequency of surfacing and the associated risk of predation. It is a solution born from constraint, where the limitations of a terrestrial lineage become the foundation for a new ecological role. The ecological twist emerges when this apparent mismatch becomes a tactical advantage. Most marine predators are recognized through a shared visual language: fins, body proportions, movement patterns that signal intent. The sea snake does not conform to these expectations. Its presence introduces ambiguity into the system, forcing other organisms to interpret a form that does not fit established categories. For prey species, this can delay recognition, creating a critical window in which the snake can close distance without triggering an immediate escape response. The unfamiliar becomes an asset, a disruption in the predictive models that govern behavior in the reef. This disruption is amplified by the sea snake's hunting strategy, which relies on both stealth and precision. Moving through crevices and over substrate, it probes the environment with a sensory system attuned to chemical cues and subtle movements. Many species feed on small fish or eels, organisms that themselves rely on hiding within the complex structure of the reef. The sea snake's slender body allows it to access spaces that are inaccessible to bulkier predators, effectively expanding the range of exploitable niches. It is not competing directly with larger hunters. It is operating in the margins, where its unique morphology provides access to otherwise protected prey. The strike itself is a convergence of speed and chemistry. Sea snakes possess highly potent venom, delivered through fixed fangs located at the front of the mouth. This venom is primarily neurotoxic, targeting the nervous system of the prey and leading to rapid paralysis. Unlike predators that rely on physical force to subdue their targets, the sea snake invests in biochemical efficiency. The bite does not need to be prolonged or forceful. It needs only to deliver a precise dose, after which the prey's own physiology becomes the mechanism of its downfall. This reduces the risk of injury to the snake and minimizes the energy expenditure associated with prolonged sangharsh. Yet this reliance on venom introduces its own constraints. Venom production is metabolically expensive, requiring the synthesis of complex proteins that must be stored and replenished. This creates a balance between usage and conservation, influencing hunting frequency and prey selection. The sea snake must deploy its venom strategically, targeting prey that justifies the investment. This selective pressure shapes behavior, favoring efficiency and precision over opportunistic feeding. The narrative reverses again when considering the sea snake's vulnerability. Despite their effectiveness as predators, sea snakes are not invulnerable. They must surface to breathe, exposing themselves to aerial predators and environmental hazards. Their dependence on specific habitats, such as coral reefs and coastal waters, ties their survival to the health of these ecosystems. Changes in water temperature, pollution, and habitat degradation can have cascading effects, altering prey availability and increasing stress on populations. The same specialization that allows them to thrive in certain conditions can render them fragile in the face of rapid change. At the sensory level, sea snakes navigate a world defined by gradients, of light, of chemical signals, of movement. Their vision is adapted for underwater conditions, but it is not their sole source of information. Chemoreception plays a critical role, allowing them to detect traces of prey through the water. This integration of senses supports a hunting strategy that is both proactive and reactive, where the snake continuously updates its understanding of the environment as it moves through it. Reproduction introduces another layer of adaptation, with many sea snakes giving birth to live young rather than laying eggs. This shift to viviparity allows them to remain fully aquatic, avoiding the need to return to land for reproduction. It is a significant evolutionary step, one that further integrates them into the marine environment. The young are born as fully formed miniature versions of the adults, capable of independent survival from the moment of birth. This strategy reduces the vulnerability associated with egg stages, but it also concentrates reproductive investment into fewer, more developed offspring. The broader ecological implications of the sea snake's presence extend through the food web. As predators of small fish and other organisms, they influence population dynamics within their habitats. Their role helps regulate prey species, contributing to the balance of the ecosystem. At the same time, they serve as prey for larger animals, linking different trophic levels and facilitating the flow of energy through the system. This dual role underscores the interconnectedness of marine ecosystems, where each species contributes to a network of interactions that sustain the whole. The final reversal lies in the perception of the sea snake as an outsider. Its body suggests displacement, a form that seems to belong elsewhere, an evolutionary experiment that wandered into the wrong environment. Yet this perception is rooted in human expectations rather than ecological reality. The sea snake is not an intruder. It is a product of adaptation, a lineage that has successfully navigated the transition from land to sea by reshaping its biology to meet new demands. Its wrong body is not a flaw. It is a solution, one that reveals the flexibility of life in the face of changing conditions. As it moves through the water, the sea snake does not announce its presence. It glides, its body tracing a path that is both deliberate and understated. The reef continues its constant motion, fish darting, currents shifting, light filtering through the surface. Within this dynamic system, the sea snake operates as a quiet force, its impact measured not in spectacle, but in precision. It does not need to dominate the environment to be effective. It needs only to function within it, exploiting the spaces and opportunities that its unique design affords. In this way, the sea snake becomes a reminder that evolution does not follow a single path. It explores possibilities, testing configurations that may seem improbable or even contradictory. Some of these configurations fail, unable to meet the demands of their environments. Others, like the sea snake, succeed in ways that challenge our assumptions about form and function. They reveal that the boundaries between habitats, between categories, are more fluid than they appear. The ocean does not reject the unfamiliar. It absorbs it, reshapes it, and integrates it into its systems. The sea snake is not a visitor from another world. It is a testament to the capacity of life to adapt, to transform, and to thrive in conditions that would seem, at first glance, incompatible with its origins. And in the silent efficiency of its strike, in the subtlety of its movement, it demonstrates that survival is not always about fitting in. Sometimes it is about redefining what it means to belong. The step never lands on an animal. It lands on absence, and then the absence answers. Pressure transfers through soft tissue into something that should not react, a patch of reef that looks as inert as broken coral and silt. For a fraction of a second, nothing happens, and then the contact becomes a transaction. Spines that were invisible a moment before pivot and lock, not as a strike, but as a consequence of force, delivering a payload that does not tear or crush, but rewrites the body it enters. The water does not erupt. There is no chase, no visible aggression, only a correction, delivered through chemistry, that begins at the point of contact and spreads with a precision that feels disproportionate to the stillness that produced it. The organism responsible does not move. It does not need to. It has already achieved the outcome before the scene has time to make sense. The stonefish exists at the extreme edge of biological disappearance, a vertebrate that has traded recognition for function so completely that it no longer presents as an organism in any conventional sense. Its body is irregular, encrusted, layered with textures that mirror the chaotic surfaces of reef rubble and sediment-covered substrate. Skin folds create shadow gradients that mimic erosion patterns, while coloration aligns with the local palette of algae, coral fragments, and decaying organic matter. This is not mimicry of a specific object. It is statistical camouflage, a convergence toward the average visual noise of the environment. The stonefish does not resemble a rock in isolation. It resembles the concept of background itself. This strategy exploits a fundamental limitation in perception, the tendency to filter out stable, low-contrast information in favor of movement and defined edges. Predators and prey alike rely on detecting deviations from baseline patterns, signals that indicate the presence of something active or relevant. The stonefish removes those deviations. It suppresses motion to near zero, integrates its outline into the substrate, and allows the environment to define its appearance. In doing so, it bypasses the initial stage of detection, never triggering the cognitive processes that would lead to classification. It is not ignored because it is hidden. It is ignored because it never registers as something that requires attention. The ecological twist emerges when this absence becomes an active force. The stonefish is not merely avoiding detection. It is positioning itself within the pathways of other organisms, turning the normal flow of movement into an opportunity. Small fish and invertebrates navigate the reef by following gradients of food availability and shelter, often passing over or near the substrate in predictable patterns. The stonefish occupies these routes, embedding itself in locations where prey density is high. When a target enters its immediate vicinity, the stillness breaks, not gradually but explosively. The feeding mechanism of the stonefish is a study in extreme acceleration over minimal distance. It employs a rapid expansion of the buccal cavity, generating a powerful suction force that draws water and prey into its mouth. This action occurs within a timescale so short that it effectively eliminates the possibility of escape. The prey is not chased or overtaken. It is engulfed by a sudden collapse of pressure, a localized event that converts proximity into capture. This method aligns with the stonefish's overall strategy. Conserve energy through stillness, then release it in a single, decisive moment. Yet the most defining feature of the stonefish is not its feeding, but its defense. A system that transforms passive contact into a potent deterrent. Along its dorsal surface, specialized spines are connected to venom glands, forming a mechanism that is both simple and highly effective. When pressure is applied, as when a predator attempts to bite or a larger organism inadvertently steps on it, the spines penetrate the skin of the aggressor, delivering venom directly into the tissue. This venom contains a complex mixture of toxins that can disrupt cellular function, affect cardiovascular systems, and induce intense physiological responses. The narrative reverses here with striking clarity. The stonefish, which appears as inert substrate, becomes one of the most chemically defended organisms in its environment. Its lack of movement, which might be interpreted as vulnerability, is in fact a calculated reliance on a secondary line of defense that activates only upon contact. This allows the stonefish to maintain its camouflage without the need for constant vigilance or escape responses. It does not need to detect every threat. It only needs to survive the moment of contact, after which the consequences discourage further interaction. This dual strategy, avoidance through invisibility and deterrence through venom, creates a layered defense system that operates across different stages of interaction. First, the stonefish avoids detection entirely. If that fails, it allows contact to occur, but ensures that the outcome is unfavorable for the aggressor. This reduces the frequency of repeated attacks, as predators that experience the venom are unlikely to target similar shapes in the future. In this way, the stonefish influences behavior beyond the immediate interaction, contributing to a learned avoidance within the ecosystem. However, this specialization is not without cost. The production and maintenance of venom require metabolic investment, and the reliance on stillness limits the stonefish's ability to respond to environmental changes. It is highly dependent on the stability of its habitat, particularly the availability of substrates that match its appearance. In environments where sediment composition or reef structure changes, its camouflage may become less effective, increasing the risk of detection. The stonefish is therefore tightly coupled to the conditions of its ecosystem, thriving in niches where its unique combination of traits can be fully expressed. At the physiological level, the stonefish's body reflects a balance between rigidity and flexibility. Its skeletal structure supports the dorsal spines and maintains the integrity of its form, while its musculature allows for the rapid expansion required for feeding. The skin, with its irregular surfaces and embedded textures, serves both as camouflage and as a protective layer. This integration of form and function creates an organism that is highly specialized for a narrow ecological role, one that prioritizes efficiency over versatility. The broader ecological implications of the stonefish's presence extend through its interactions with other species. As a predator, it regulates populations of small fish and invertebrates, contributing to the balance of the reef community. As a chemically defended organism, it influences the behavior of larger predators, shaping patterns of avoidance and interaction. These effects ripple through the ecosystem, creating a network of relationships that define the structure and dynamics of the habitat. Reproduction in stonefish follows a pattern that reflects their overall strategy of minimal exposure. Eggs are often released in gelatinous masses that settle on the substrate, blending into the environment much like the adults. This reduces the visibility of the reproductive stage, protecting it from predation. The larvae, once hatched, must navigate a different set of challenges, transitioning from a more mobile phase to the sedentary lifestyle of adulthood. This shift involves significant changes in morphology and behavior, aligning the developing organism with the demands of its future niche. The final reversal lies in the perception of the stonefish as a passive element of the environment. It appears as something that has opted out of the dynamic interactions that define life on the reef. In reality, it is deeply engaged in those interactions, but on its own terms. It does not chase, compete, or display in ways that are immediately visible. Instead, it shapes outcomes through absence, through the removal of signals that would otherwise define it as an organism. In this way, the stonefish becomes a demonstration of how evolution can favor strategies that minimize presence rather than maximize it. It reveals that survival is not always about being seen, being fast, or being strong. It can also be about becoming indistinguishable from the environment, about existing in a state where the boundaries between organism and habitat blur to the point of invisibility. As the reef continues its constant motion, fish weaving through coral, currents shifting sediment, light refracting across uneven surfaces, the stonefish remains embedded within the scene. It does not announce itself. It does not need to. Its success lies in its ability to remain unrecognized until the moment recognition becomes unavoidable. And in that moment, the illusion breaks, not into motion, but into consequence. The floor does not move. It responds. The shell does not crack gradually. It detonates. A snail inches across the substrate, its spiral armor a slow-moving fortress refined by generations of predation pressure, calcium layered upon calcium until the structure resists almost everything the reef can throw at it. Around it, the water holds a tension that is not yet visible, a proximity measured not in distance but in reaction time. From a crevice no wider than the length of a finger, something watches with a stillness that conceals velocity rather than lacking it. The strike, when it comes, is not seen as motion, but as consequence. A flash, a shockwave, and the shell fractures as if it has been struck by a force far larger than the organism that delivered it. The prey does not process the event. It is over before the nervous system can respond. The reef returns to its baseline rhythm, but something fundamental has been rewritten in that instant. Scale no longer predicts power. The mantis shrimp occupies a niche defined not by size or stealth alone, but by the manipulation of physics at a scale where most organisms cannot operate. Its body appears modular, a segmented exoskeleton that follows the general blueprint of crustaceans, yet embedded within that familiar architecture are structures that push the limits of biological materials and motion. The raptorial appendages, specialized limbs folded beneath the body, are not merely tools for grasping or tearing. They are spring-loaded systems, storing elastic energy within exoskeletal components that are then released with explosive speed. This mechanism allows the mantis shrimp to generate accelerations that rival those of much larger organisms, converting stored potential into kinetic force within a fraction of a second. This strike is not only fast, it is transformative. As the appendage moves through the water, it creates a rapid drop in pressure behind it, leading to the formation of cavitation bubbles. These bubbles collapse almost immediately, releasing additional energy in the form of heat, light, and shock waves. The result is a dual impact system. The initial strike delivers mechanical force, and the subsequent cavitation collapse amplifies the effect. effectively doubling the destructive capacity. This is not simply a punch. It is a localized event where biological motion intersects with fluid dynamics, producing outcomes that extend beyond direct contact. The ecological twist emerges in the relationship between this overwhelming force and the animal's size. In most systems, power scales with mass, larger predators exerting greater influence through sheer physical presence. The mantis shrimp inverts this expectation. It concentrates extreme force within a compact body, allowing it to access prey that would otherwise be protected by hard shells or structural defenses. This creates a disruption in the typical hierarchy of the reef, where small does not mean weak, and armor does not guarantee safety. The mantis shrimp operates as a micro-scale apex predator within its immediate environment, reshaping the interactions of species that might otherwise be insulated from predation. This capability is tightly integrated with an equally extraordinary sensory system. The mantis shrimp's eyes are mounted on stalks and can move independently, providing a wide field of view and the ability to track multiple objects simultaneously. More importantly, these eyes are equipped with a complex arrangement of photoreceptors that allow the detection of a broad range of wavelengths, including polarized light. This expands the animal's perceptual world beyond what most marine organisms can access, enabling it to detect signals and patterns that are invisible to others. This sensory advantage is not merely about seeing more, it is about seeing differently. Polarization. Sensitivity, for example, allows the mantis shrimp to interpret the orientation of light waves, revealing information about surfaces, movement, and even the presence of transparent or camouflaged organisms. This adds a layer of depth to its interaction with the environment, where visual information is not limited to color and intensity, but includes structural properties of light itself. The mantis shrimp does not just observe its surroundings, it decodes them. The narrative reverses when this advanced perception is paired with the animal's aggressive capabilities. One might expect such a powerful predator to dominate its environment openly, relying on force to secure resources. Instead, many mantis shrimp species are highly territorial, occupying burrows that they defend with both physical and visual displays. These burrows are not random shelters. They are engineered spaces, excavated and maintained to provide both protection and strategic advantage. From within these structures, the mantis shrimp can monitor its surroundings, launch attacks, and retreat when necessary. This behavior reflects a balance between exposure and concealment. The mantis shrimp is capable of extraordinary violence, but it is also vulnerable when outside its burrow. Larger predators can and do prey on mantis shrimp, and the energy required to produce their powerful strikes imposes limits on how often they can engage in such actions. The burrow becomes an extension of the animal's body, a fixed point in a dynamic environment that allows it to control interactions on its own terms. It is not simply a place of refuge. It is a platform for both offense and defense. The feeding strategies of mantis shrimp further illustrate this duality. Some species, known as smashers, use their raptorial appendages to break open hard-shelled prey, while others, known as spearers, possess spined appendages designed to impale soft-bodied organisms. This divergence represents different solutions to the same problem: how to exploit available resources within a competitive environment. Each strategy involves trade-offs, with smashers investing in force and durability, and spearers in speed and precision. These variations demonstrate the flexibility of the mantis shrimp lineage, adapting its core design to different ecological contexts. At the level of material science, the mantis shrimp's appendages represent one of the most advanced natural structures known. The impact region is composed of a composite material that combines hardness with the ability to dissipate energy, preventing damage to the limb itself. This allows the mantis shrimp to deliver repeated high-energy strikes without self-destruction, a challenge that even human-engineered systems struggle to overcome. The structure is layered, with different materials arranged to absorb and redistribute stress, ensuring that the force generated is directed outward rather than reflected back into the organism. This integration of form and function highlights the role of evolutionary processes in shaping solutions that balance competing demands. The mantis shrimp must generate extreme while maintaining the integrity of its own body, a problem that requires both strength and resilience. The resulting design is not optimized for a single parameter, but for a combination of factors that together enable its unique capabilities. Reproduction introduces another dimension to the mantis shrimp's life history, often involving complex behaviors related to mate selection and brood care. Some species form monogamous pairs, maintaining shared burrows and cooperating in the protection of eggs. This social structure adds a layer of stability to an otherwise competitive environment, where individual survival is closely tied to the ability to secure and defend resources. The presence of such behaviors suggests a level of behavioral sophistication that complements the animal's physical and sensory adaptations. The broader ecological implications of the mantis shrimp's presence are significant. As predators of both hard-shelled and soft-bodied organisms, they influence the composition of the reef community, affecting the abundance and distribution of multiple species. Their burrowing activities also contribute to the physical structure of the substrate, altering sediment distribution and creating microhabitats for other organisms. These interactions position the mantis shrimp as both a consumer and an ecosystem engineer, shaping its environment in ways that extend beyond direct predation. The final reversal lies in the perception of the mantis shrimp as an anomaly, a creature that appears over-engineered for its size and role. Its combination of advanced vision, extreme and complex behavior seems excessive, as if it exceeds the requirements of its niche. Yet this perception overlooks the cumulative pressures that have shaped its evolution. Each trait is a response to specific challenges, refined over time to create a system that operates at the edge of what is physically and biologically possible. In this sense, the mantis shrimp is not an outlier, but a demonstration of how diverse evolutionary pathways can converge on solutions that defy expectation. It reveals that power is not solely a function of size, that perception can extend beyond conventional limits, and that behavior can integrate these elements into a cohesive strategy for survival. As it retreats into its burrow, the mantis shrimp disappears from view, its presence reduced once again to a subtle distortion in the substrate. The reef continues its constant motion, unaware of the latent force contained within that small space. It is a reminder that beneath the apparent calm of the ocean lies a world of interactions governed by principles that are not always visible, where the smallest organisms can exert the greatest influence through mechanisms that challenge our understanding of scale and capability. The shell did not fail. The system around it changed. The contact is over before the signal arrives. A small fish cuts through the water column, its body tuned to interpret pressure changes, light shifts, and movement patterns that define the difference between safety and threat. Nothing in its path registers as danger. There is no silhouette to avoid, no approaching mass, no shadow expanding across the field of vision. The water appears empty. Then the body intersects something that does not look like matter, and the system collapses from the outside in. Cells fire, muscles seize, coordination dissolves, and the fish begins to spiral, not from injury in the mechanical sense, but from a biochemical override delivered through structures so fine they never announce themselves. The predator does not chase. It has already deployed its mechanism long before the prey understood that there was anything to escape. The box jellyfish exists at a boundary, where the definition of an animal begins to blur into the physics of its environment. Its body is a near-transparent cube, a gelatinous structure that refracts light rather than blocking it, creating a presence that is visually incomplete. Unlike organisms that rely on opacity or defined edges to establish form, the box jellyfish minimizes its visual signature, allowing light to pass through with only subtle distortion. This transparency is not absolute, but it is sufficient to disrupt detection in a medium where visibility depends on contrast. In clear tropical waters, where light penetrates deeply and shadows are diffuse, the absence of strong visual cues becomes a form of concealment. Yet this apparent simplicity conceals a system of remarkable complexity. Along the edges of the bell hang tentacles armed with specialized cells known as nematocysts, microscopic capsules that function as both sensor and weapon. Each nematocyst contains a coiled thread under high internal pressure, capable of firing with extraordinary when triggered. Upon contact, the thread everts, penetrating the target and delivering venom with a precision that operates at the level of individual cells. This is not a gradual process. It is an instantaneous event, where mechanical contact is converted into chemical action in a timescale that bypasses conventional defensive responses. The ecological twist emerges in the relationship between passivity and control. The box jellyfish does not pursue prey in the way that active predators do. It drifts, its movement influenced by currents, yet it is not entirely passive. It can contract its bell to produce directional, allowing it to navigate through the water column with a degree of intention. This capability distinguishes it from many other gelatinous organisms, enabling it to position itself in areas where prey density is higher. It is not chasing its targets. It is placing itself in the path of movement, turning the environment into a delivery system. This strategy relies on a fundamental property of aquatic ecosystems: the constant flow of organisms through space. Plankton, small fish, and other potential prey are carried by currents, moving through a dynamic landscape where encounters are often determined by chance. The box jellyfish exploits this flow, extending its tentacles into the surrounding water like a network of invisible. Any organism that intersects these lines triggers the deployment of nematocysts, initiating the sequence that leads to capture. The jellyfish does not need to recognize its prey in advance. It only needs to respond to contact. However, the narrative reverses when considering the sensory capabilities that underlie this behavior. Despite its simple appearance, the box jellyfish possesses a set of eyes organized into structures known as rhopalia, located at the corners of its bell. These eyes vary in complexity, with some capable of forming images. This allows the jellyfish to detect obstacles and possibly even the silhouettes of objects in its environment. It can orient itself relative to the surface, avoid collisions, and maintain a position within preferred. This level of sensory integration challenges the assumption that such a seemingly primitive organism operates purely on reflex. The presence of vision introduces a layer of decision-making into the jellyfish's behavior. It can adjust its position in response to environmental cues, selecting locations that maximize its chances of encountering prey while minimizing. This is not intelligence in the way it is often defined, but it is a form of environmental interaction that goes beyond passive drifting. The jellyfish becomes an active participant in its ecosystem, using limited but effective sensory inputs to influence its survival. The venom itself represents a convergence of biochemical strategies designed to disrupt multiple physiological systems simultaneously. It can affect nerve cells, muscle function, and cellular membranes, leading to rapid immobilization of prey. In some cases, the effects are so that the prey is incapacitated almost immediately upon contact. This efficiency reduces the need for prolonged handling or ingestion, allowing the jellyfish to conserve energy while maximizing feeding success. The venom is not merely a defensive tool. It is central to the jellyfish's role as a predator. This reliance on venom also creates a distinct ecological position. The box jellyfish does not compete directly with predators that rely on speed, or instead, it occupies a niche where contact itself becomes the decisive factor. This allows it to exploit prey that might be inaccessible to other predators, particularly those that rely on evasion rather than. In doing so, it contributes to the regulation of populations within its habitat, influencing the dynamics of the food web in ways that are not immediately visible. Yet the same characteristics that make the box jellyfish an effective predator also render it vulnerable. It is composed largely of water, lacking the protective structures found in more robust organisms. It is susceptible to damage from turbulence, in water conditions, and interactions with larger. Its survival depends on maintaining a delicate balance between exposure and avoidance, positioning itself in areas where it can feed without being subjected to excessive stress or predation. Reproduction introduces another layer of complexity, involving a life cycle that alternates between different forms. The jellyfish stage is only one phase, preceded by a polyp stage that attaches to surfaces and reproduces asexually. This alternation allows the species to exploit different ecological niches at different times, spreading risk and increasing resilience. The transition between stages involves significant morphological and functional changes, reflecting the adaptability of the organism to varying conditions. The broader ecological implications of the box jellyfish's presence extend beyond individual interactions. As both predator and prey, it influences the distribution and behavior of other species. Its tentacles create of heightened risk, altering movement patterns and feeding strategies within the community. At the same time, it serves as a resource for organisms that have evolved resistance to its venom, integrating it into the larger of flow within the ecosystem. The final reversal lies in the perception of the box jellyfish as a passive entity, a drifting form that lacks the agency of more visibly active. This perception is a result of its appearance, not its function. In reality, the jellyfish operates as a highly effective control system, where minimal is paired with maximum. It does not need to dominate its environment through. It needs only to exist within it in a way that transforms contact into consequence. In this way, the box jellyfish redefines the relationship between form and function. It demonstrates that an organism can achieve ecological dominance without conforming to the visual and behavioral expectations associated with predation. Its body, which appears fragile and incomplete, is in fact a highly specialized interface for interacting with the environment, converting the constant of the ocean into opportunities for survival. As it drifts through the water, its transparency blending with the surrounding light, the box jellyfish becomes almost indistinguishable from the medium it inhabits. It is not hidden in the traditional sense. It is integrated, its presence diffused across the visual field in a way that resists detection. Yet within that integration lies a system capable of profound, a reminder that in the ocean, the most dangerous organisms are not always the ones that announce themselves. The water is not empty. It is waiting. The whole breathes, not metaphorically, not as a trick of light or drifting current, but as a measurable exchange of water through a structure that should be empty. A small fish hovers at the edge of the crevice, drawn by the promise of shelter that the reef has taught it to trust, a narrow space where larger predators cannot follow. The opening pulses, a slow expansion and contraction that suggests nothing more than water moving through stone. Then the geometry breaks. The darkness inside does not remain background. It advances. The strike is not a lunge across distance, but an eruption from within it, a body that was never seen because it was never meant to be recognized as separate from the whole itself. By the time the prey registers the shift, it is already inside a system designed to convert entry into capture. The moray eel exists in a category that disrupts the visual and behavioral expectations of what a fish should be. Its elongated, limbless body resembles that of terrestrial serpents, lacking the prominent fins and streamlined symmetry that define most marine swimmers. Yet this form is not an evolutionary accident. It is a deliberate specialization for inhabiting the interstitial spaces of the reef, the cracks and cavities where traditional body plans become liabilities. The moray does not compete in open water. It dominates the architecture of confinement, turning structural complexity into a hunting advantage. Its constant gaping, often interpreted as aggression, is in fact a physiological necessity. Unlike many fish that rely on buccal pumping to move water over their gills, moray eels must actively ventilate through rhythmic opening and closing of the mouth. This behavior ensures a continuous flow of oxygenated water across the gill surfaces, maintaining respiration in a confined space where passive flow is insufficient. The ecological twist begins here. What appears to be a threat display is actually a metabolic requirement, a function that has been misread by both observers and potential prey. The eel looks perpetually ready to bite, when in reality, it is perpetually trying to breathe. This misinterpretation becomes part of its strategy. The open mouth, lined with recurved teeth, creates a visual signal that deters some organisms while failing to trigger the specific escape responses associated with fast-moving predators. The moray does not rely on speed in the conventional sense. Its strike is localized, a rapid extension of the anterior body that covers minimal distance but does so with precision. The prey, often focused on the immediate environment of the crevice, does not perceive the eel as a moving threat until the moment of contact. The true complexity of the moray's feeding mechanism lies beyond the initial capture. Once the prey is seized, a second set of jaws, pharyngeal jaws located in the throat, engages in a process that is both mechanically efficient and biologically unusual. These jaws move forward into the oral cavity, grasping the prey and pulling it deeper into the digestive tract. This system compensates for the eel's inability to generate strong suction, a limitation imposed by its elongated body and reduced buccal volume. Instead of drawing prey in with water flow, the moray physically transports it inward, a solution that redefines the mechanics of feeding in fish. The narrative reverses at this point, transforming the moray from a simple ambush predator into a coordinated system of sequential actions. The initial bite is only the first stage. The real consumption occurs through an internal mechanism that operates independently of the visible jaws. This division of function allows the moray to maintain a grip on the prey while simultaneously advancing it toward digestion, reducing the likelihood of escape. It is not a single action, but a series of integrated movements, each one optimized for a specific role. This specialization is closely tied to the spatial constraints of the reef environment. Within narrow crevices, there is limited room for maneuvering or for the generation of water flow required for suction feeding. The moray's body plan and feeding strategy are adaptations to these constraints, allowing it to exploit a niche that is inaccessible to many other predators. By occupying these spaces, the moray influences the distribution and behavior of prey species, creating zones of risk within the reef that alter movement patterns and habitat use. At the sensory level, the moray eel operates with a different emphasis than many visually oriented predators. Its sense of smell is highly developed, allowing it to detect chemical cues in the water that indicate the presence of potential prey. This chemosensory capability compensates for limited visual acuity, particularly in the low-light conditions of reef crevices. The eel does not need to see its prey clearly. It needs only to detect its presence and position itself accordingly. This reliance on chemical information aligns with its ambush strategy, where detection occurs before visual confirmation. The ecological implications of this sensory adaptation extend beyond individual events. By responding to chemical gradients, the moray can locate areas of high biological activity, positioning itself in regions where prey is more likely to pass. This behavior contributes to the dynamic distribution of predators within the reef, influencing the spatial structure of the ecosystem. The moray becomes part of a network of interactions that shape how energy flows through the environment, linking hidden spaces with the broader of life. Reproduction in moray eels involves a life cycle that includes a larval stage known as the leptocephalus, a transparent, ribbon-like form that drifts in the open ocean. This stage contrasts sharply with the benthic, crevice-dwelling adult, representing a transition between two distinct ecological niches. The larvae are carried by currents, dispersing across wide areas before settling into suitable habitats. This dispersal mechanism ensures genetic exchange and colonization of new, but it also introduces a period of vulnerability where survival depends on avoiding predation in a vastly different environment. The transition from larva to adult involves significant morphological changes, aligning the organism with the demands of its future role. The development of the elongated body, reduced fins, and specialized jaws reflects a shift from of drifting to one of confinement and ambush. This transformation underscores the adaptability of the species, capable of occupying multiple ecological roles across its life history. The final reversal lies in the perception of the moray eel as a creature defined by aggression and predation. While it is undeniably an effective hunter, its behavior is shaped as much by constraint as by capability. It does not patrol the reef in search of prey. It waits, embedded within the structure of the environment, relying on the ear of other organisms to bring opportunities within reach. Its apparent menace is a byproduct of its form and function, a visual interpretation that does not fully capture the complexity of its interactions. In this sense, the moray eel is not simply a predator hiding in a hole. It is a reconfiguration of space itself, a living extension of the reef's architecture that transforms shelter into risk. The crevice, once a refuge, becomes of convergence where movement can lead to capture. The eel does not need to dominate the open environment. It needs only to control the boundaries, the transitions between exposed and protected spaces. As the water continues to move through the reef, carrying particles, signals, and organisms, the moray remains within its chosen cavity, its body coiled and partially concealed. The mouth opens and closes in a steady rhythm, a function of respiration that doubles as a visual signal, To those that understand its meaning, it is a warning. To those that do not, it is an invitation. The whole breathes, and the reef reorganizes itself around that fact. The attack fails not because the predator hesitates, but because the target ceases to be the kind of thing that can be attacked. A reef hunter closes distance with the confidence of pattern recognition, its nervous system compressing color, outline, and movement into a single decision. Prey within reach. Strike now. The body ahead is small, soft, and proportioned correctly. Its motion unremarkable. Its silhouette clean enough to trigger the full cascade of predatory commitment. Then, at the exact threshold where motion becomes contact, the geometry explodes outward. The fish does not flee. It expands. Skin stretches. Volume multiplies. And the organism inflates into a near spherical mass that no longer conforms to any edible template. Spines that were once flattened rise into rigid protrusions, transforming surface into hazard. The predator does not adjust. It aborts, not from fear, but from incompatibility. The target is no longer something its body can process. The pufferfish exists at a fault line between form and function, an organism that presents one identity under calm conditions and a completely different one under threat. This is not a gradual shift. It is a rapid, reversible transformation driven by a physiological mechanism that converts water intake into structural defense. Specialized musculature and highly elastic skin allow the puffer to draw in large volumes of water, expanding its body far beyond its resting dimensions. Internally, organs rearrange to accommodate this sudden increase in volume, while the skeletal structure provides enough support to maintain integrity under pressure. The result is a temporary reconfiguration that alters not only size, but the entire interaction profile of the animal. This transformation exploits a critical limitation in predator behavior, the reliance on pre-learned categories of prey. Most predators are adapted to handle targets within a certain range of shapes and sizes, their jaws, teeth, and digestive systems optimized for specific geometries. The pufferfish disrupts this system by presenting a form that falls outside those parameters. A predator that can easily swallow a streamlined fish may be physically incapable of ingesting a spiny sphere of the same mass. The ecological twist lies in this mismatch. The puffer does not need to outrun or outfight its attacker. It needs only to become unprocessable. The spines themselves are not merely passive obstacles. In many species, they are normally held flat against the body, minimizing drag and maintaining a conventional profile. Upon inflation, these spines erect, creating a surface that is both physically and behaviorally deterrent. Contact becomes painful, and the risk of injury increases with each attempt to bite. This adds a second layer of defense, reinforcing the primary strategy of geometric disruption. The predator is not only unable to swallow the puffer, it is discouraged from attempting further interaction. Beneath this mechanical defense lies a biochemical dimension that amplifies the puffer's effectiveness. Many pufferfish contain tetrodotoxin, a potent neurotoxin that interferes with nerve function by blocking sodium channels. This toxin is not produced by the fish itself, but is accumulated through its diet, often involving symbiotic bacteria. The presence of this toxin introduces a chemical risk that extends beyond the immediate encounter. A predator that successfully bites a puffer may suffer consequences that affect its ability to feed or even survive. This creates a feedback loop within the ecosystem, where learned avoidance can spread through populations, reducing predation pressure on the species as a whole. The narrative reverses at this point, revealing that the puffer's apparent vulnerability is a carefully constructed illusion. In its uninflated state, it appears slow, poorly defended, and easily targeted. Its swimming style, driven by the oscillation of small fins rather than powerful tail strokes, lacks the speed associated with escape. Yet this very limitation is part of its strategy. By not investing heavily in locomotion, the puffer allocates resources to other systems: elastic skin, toxin accumulation, and behavioral responses that collectively provide a different form of resilience. It does not need to outrun danger if it can redefine it. This allocation reflects a broader principle of metabolic constraint. Energy is finite, and organisms must distribute it across competing demands, such as movement, growth, reproduction, and defense. The puffer fish represents a solution that prioritizes defense through transformation and toxicity over speed. This choice shapes its entire biology, from its musculature to its feeding habits. It often consumes hard-shelled invertebrates, using strong beak-like teeth to crush prey that many other fish cannot exploit. This diet not only provides nutrition, but also contributes to the accumulation of toxins, linking feeding behavior directly to defensive capability. At the level of sensory interaction, the puffer fish operates within a system where timing is critical. The decision to inflate must occur within a narrow window, triggered by the detection of threat, but executed before contact becomes unavoidable. This requires a rapid assessment of environmental cues, integrating visual, mechanical, and possibly chemical signals to initiate the response. Once inflated, the puffer is less mobile, its ability to maneuver reduced by the increased volume and altered hydrodynamics. This creates a temporary vulnerability, where the fish must rely entirely on its defensive state until the threat subsides. This vulnerability highlights the importance of context in the puffer's strategy. Inflation is not a default state. It is a conditional response, deployed only when necessary. In calm conditions, maintaining a streamlined form allows for more efficient movement and feeding. The ability to switch between these states provides flexibility, enabling the puffer to balance the demands of survival and resource acquisition. It is not locked into a single mode of existence. It transitions between modes as conditions change. The broader ecological implications of this strategy extend through the food web. By altering predator behavior, the pufferfish influences patterns of predation within its habitat. Predators that learn to avoid puffers may shift their focus to other species, redistributing across the community. This can have cascading effects, affecting the abundance and distribution of multiple organisms. The puffer, though not a dominant predator, plays a role in shaping the dynamics of the ecosystem through its interactions. Reproduction introduces another layer of complexity, with some species exhibiting behaviors that involve the creation of intricate patterns in the substrate to attract mates. These patterns, formed through precise movements of the body and fins, serve as visual signals of fitness and environmental suitability. This aspect of the puffer's life history demonstrates that its capabilities extend beyond defense, encompassing behaviors that contribute to reproductive success and species continuity. The final reversal lies in the perception of the pufferfish as a creature defined by its defensive transformation. While the inflation response is its most visible and dramatic trait, it is not the entirety of its identity. The puffer is an integrated system where feeding, toxin accumulation, sensory processing, and behavioral flexibility converge to create a survival strategy that operates across multiple dimensions. The inflated form is not a separate state. It is an extension of the same organism, activated under specific conditions to meet a particular challenge. In this sense, the pufferfish reveals a fundamental aspect of life in the ocean. Identity is not fixed. It is contingent, shaped by interactions and capable of rapid change. The same body that appears ordinary can become extraordinary when the situation demands it, not by adding new components, but by reconfiguring existing ones. This capacity for transformation allows the puffer to navigate a world where threats are unpredictable and often unavoidable. As the predator withdraws and the immediate danger passes, the puffer slowly releases the water it has taken in, its body returning to its original proportions. The spines flatten, the sphere collapses back into a familiar outline, and the fish resumes its unassuming presence within the reef. The transformation leaves no permanent mark, only a memory within the predator's nervous system and a subtle shift in the dynamics of the environment. The reef continues, its patterns of movement and interaction unfolding without pause. Within it, the pufferfish exists as both participant and anomaly, a creature that can step outside the expectations of its form when necessary. It does not need to dominate the system. It needs only to survive within it, using the tools it has evolved to navigate a landscape defined by constant change. The body that was once prey becomes something else entirely, and in that moment the rules no longer apply. The current delivers a body to the mouth of a flower that cannot move. A juvenile fish, no longer shielded by the loose formation of its school, drifts half a body length too close to a cluster of soft, waving tentacles. The contact is so gentle that it barely disturbs the water. There is no snap, no lunge, no shadow falling across the reef. There is only touch. In that fraction of a second, thousands of microscopic harpoons fire in coordinated silence, penetrating skin and injecting venom that disrupts cellular membranes and nervous transmission. The fish convulses, not from crushing force, but from biochemical interruption, its muscles seizing under a toxin delivered by structures too small to see. The tentacles that looked ornamental begin to contract, folding inward with deliberate slowness, drawing prey toward a central mouth that was indistinguishable from a crease in the flesh moments before. The rock has eaten. The sea anemone occupies a biological position that destabilizes categories. It is an animal, a member of the phylum Cnidaria, yet its architecture mirrors that of a plant rooted to substrate. Its cylindrical body column adheres to rock through a muscular pedal disc, forming a stable anchor in environments where currents exert constant mechanical stress. This fixed position does not signal passivity. It signals investment. By surrendering locomotion, the anemone reallocates metabolic resources toward other systems: nematocyst production, venom synthesis, tissue regeneration, and the maintenance of a symbiotic relationship that turns light into supplemental energy. Its tentacles, arranged in a radial symmetry that evokes floral geometry, are densely packed with cnidocytes, specialized cells containing nematocysts primed to discharge upon mechanical or chemical stimulation. Each discharge is a conversion of stored osmotic pressure into kinetic action, a microscopic event that pierces and envenomates in less time than most prey can process sensation. The dual-layer reality emerges immediately. The gentle sway of the tentacles is both a visual mimicry of harmless vegetation and a dynamic field of armed triggers waiting for contact. The anemone does not chase. It weaponizes stillness. This stillness is strategic. By occupying a fixed position, the anemone inserts itself into the flow of the reef's nutrient and organismal traffic. Currents bring plankton, detritus, and small animals within reach, transforming the anemone into a biological checkpoint in a system defined by movement. In energetic terms, it exploits hydrodynamics, converting environmental motion into feeding opportunity without expending energy on pursuit. This is not a failure to move. It is an adaptation to a medium where water does the traveling. Yet the anemone's role extends beyond solitary predation. Embedded within its tissues are symbiotic dinoflagellates, microscopic algae that perform photosynthesis, producing carbohydrates that supplement the anemone's nutritional intake. In exchange, the algae receive protection and access to sunlight through the translucent tissues of their host. This partnership integrates two metabolic systems into one functional unit, blurring the line between animal and plant, not just in appearance, but in physiology. The anemone is not simply a predator anchored to rock. It is a composite organism, drawing energy from both captured prey and captured light. The narrative reverses here. The apparent weakness of immobility becomes a platform for architectural influence. Around many anemones, territories form. Certain fish species, most famously clownfish, inhabit the forest of tentacles without triggering the lethal discharge that affects other organisms. This immunity is not accidental. It is mediated by a protective mucus layer that prevents nematocyst activation, a biochemical disguise that allows the fish to live among stinging cells without harm. The anemone becomes a fortress, its tentacles forming a defensive perimeter that deters predators while sheltering its symbiotic residents. In this relationship, the anemone is not merely a host. It is an ecological nucleus. Clownfish defend the anemone from certain predators and may enhance water circulation around the tentacles through their movement, improving oxygen exchange and possibly increasing feeding efficiency. The fixed organism becomes the center of a mobile network, its immobility generating a sphere of influence that extends beyond its physical boundaries. What appeared to be a solitary trap is revealed as the foundation of a micro-community. The defensive capacity of the anemone also shapes the spatial organization of the reef. Its stinging perimeter creates exclusion zones, areas where other sessile organisms cannot easily encroach. In densely populated reef systems, space is a limiting resource, and competition for substrate can be intense. The anemone's venom provides a chemical advantage, deterring competitors and preserving its territory. In some contexts, this contributes to localized patterns of biodiversity, where the presence of an anemone alters the distribution of neighboring species. The rock beneath it is not just occupied, it is defended. At a cellular level, the anemone demonstrates remarkable regenerative abilities. Tissue damage can be repaired, and in some species, individuals can reproduce asexually through processes such as fission, effectively cloning themselves to expand their presence. This capacity for regeneration and replication reinforces the anemone's persistence in environments subject to disturbance. It does not rely on rapid movement to escape damage. It relies on resilience and renewal. Reproduction through sexual means introduces larval stages that drift in the plankton, dispersing across distances before settling and metamorphosing into new polyps. This life cycle mirrors the tension between mobility and fixation that defines the anemone's existence. The adult is rooted, yet its progeny travel, carried by currents that connect distant reefs. This dispersal ensures genetic mixing and colonization of new habitats, embedding the anemone within a broader network of ecological exchange. The ecological twist deepens when considering predation upon the anemone itself. Despite its arsenal of stinging cells, it is not invulnerable. Certain sea stars, fish, and other invertebrates have evolved mechanisms to tolerate or bypass its defenses, integrating it into the food web as both predator and prey. The tentacles that paralyze small fish may be consumed by a larger organism adapted to their toxins. The anemone's apparent dominance within its micro-territory is therefore conditional, bounded by the broader hierarchy of the reef. The final reversal lies in perception. The sea anemone is often treated as decoration, a colorful accent in the underwater landscape. Its resemblance to flowers reinforces the illusion of passivity. Yet this organism is a highly specialized interface between environment and biology, converting current into capture, light into energy, and contact into consequence. Its fixed position does not diminish its agency. It redefines it. Within the reef's complexity, the anemone stands as a paradox made flesh. It does not swim, yet it feeds. It does not pursue, yet it captures. It does not resemble a hunter, yet it consumes living prey through a system as precise as any jaw. Its tentacles continue to wave in the current, a soft motion masking a lethal threshold. Around it, fish dart and algae grow. Predators circle and currents shift. The rock appears unchanged, but the rock has a mouth, and the reef reorganizes itself around its reach. The tentacles close around the intruder, and nothing happens. A juvenile fish darts forward, vanishing into a forest of venom-tipped filaments that moments earlier paralyzed another species. The anemone's tentacles ripple, brush, and press against its scales. Thousands of nematocysts are primed to fire, each a microscopic harpoon capable of puncturing skin and injecting toxin that disrupts nerve transmission. Contact is constant. Stimulation thresholds are crossed. Yet the cascade never begins. The fish does not convulse. It does not retreat. It turns, hovers, and nestles deeper into the lethal canopy as if sinking into grass. Around it, the anemone remains armed and fully capable of killing. Within it, the fish is untouched. The clownfish lives in a space defined by universal prohibition. For nearly every other reef fish, the tentacles of a sea anemone represent a boundary enforced by chemistry and cellular weaponry. The conidocytes lining those tentacles discharge on contact, delivering venom that can immobilize prey and deter predators. The clownfish violates this rule, not by brute force or anatomical armor, but through biochemical negotiation. Its skin is coated in a specialized mucus layer that either lacks the triggering compounds that activate nematocysts or mimics the chemical signature of the anemone itself. This molecular disguise prevents the discharge response, allowing the clownfish to inhabit a zone of exclusion that remains lethal to almost all others. This is not innate immunity in the simplistic sense. Juvenile clownfish undergo an acclimation process, gradually introducing themselves to the anemone's tentacles through tentative contact that allows their mucus composition to adjust. The process reflects a neurological and behavioral choreography where repeated exposure conditions both fish and host. The anemone does not learn in the cognitive sense, yet its discharge threshold appears to respond to specific chemical cues. Over time, the fish becomes integrated into the anemone's immediate environment, recognized not as prey, but as tolerated presence. The partnership is not instantaneous. It is negotiated at the level of molecules. The ecological implications of this arrangement are profound. By occupying the anemone, the clownfish gains a fortress. Predators that would easily consume such a small fish hesitate at the boundary of stinging tentacles. The anemone becomes an extension of the fish's body, a defensive perimeter that amplifies its survival probability without requiring the fish to evolve spines, toxins, or exceptional speed. This redistribution of defense allows the clownfish to allocate metabolic resources toward growth, reproduction, and territorial behavior, rather than constant evasion. The apparent vulnerability of its size is counterbalanced by an architectural advantage. Yet the relationship is not one-sided. The clownfish provides tangible benefits to the anemone. Its movements among the tentacles increase water circulation, enhancing oxygen delivery and waste removal across the anemone's tissues. It aggressively chases away certain predators and competitors, reducing damage to its host. It may even contribute nutrients through excretion, fertilizing the symbiotic algae embedded within the anemone's tissues. This exchange creates a feedback loop where the survival of one enhances the survival of the other. The anemone is not simply shelter, it is partner. The narrative reverses here. What appears to be a timid fish hiding among dangerous tentacles is in fact a territorial agent leveraging lethal infrastructure. Clownfish defend their host anemone with surprising intensity, attacking intruders far larger than themselves. Their aggression is not reckless. It is calculated within the geometry of their fortress. By luring threats into proximity with stinging tentacles, they increase the cost of approach. The anemone's venom becomes a strategic asset in territorial disputes, effectively extending the fish's reach beyond its physical limits. This arrangement influences the spatial dynamics of the reef. Anemones hosting clownfish often become focal points of activity, attracting organisms that interact directly or indirectly with the pair. The territory around the anemone is defended, creating microhabitats where specific interactions dominate. In systems where suitable anemones are limited, competition among clownfish intensifies, shaping social hierarchies that determine access to these critical resources. Space, once merely substrate, becomes contested real estate structured by mutualism. The social structure of clownfish introduces another layer of identity disruption. Within a single anemone, a hierarchy forms based on size, with the largest individual functioning as the breeding female and the next largest as the breeding male. Smaller individuals remain sexually immature, their development suppressed by the presence of dominant fish. If the female is removed, the male undergoes a physiological transformation, changing sex and becoming the new breeding female. This capacity for sequential hermaphroditism reflects a flexible reproductive strategy tuned to the constraints of limited habitat. The anemone can support only a small group. The fish adjust their biology to ensure continuity within that constraint. This reproductive plasticity reveals a deeper principle of marine adaptation. Identity is not fixed at birth. It can be reshaped by social context and environmental limitation. The clownfish's ability to transition from male to female is governed by hormonal shifts that reconfigure gonadal tissue and behavior. The transformation is not superficial. It is systemic, altering the reproductive architecture of the individual. Within the confines of the anemone, where opportunities for dispersal are restricted, such flexibility maximizes the likelihood that a breeding pair is always present. The ecological twist intensifies when considering the vulnerability embedded within this apparent security. The clownfish's reliance on a specific anemone species ties its fate to the health of that host. Environmental stresses such as temperature anomalies can cause anemones to bleach, losing their symbiotic algae and becoming weakened. In such cases, the fortress deteriorates. the fish remains dependent on a structure that may no longer provide adequate protection. The mutualism that once conferred advantage can become a liability under changing conditions. This dependency illustrates a broader tension within reef ecosystems. Specialized relationships enhance efficiency and survival under stable conditions, but reduce resilience when disturbances occur. The clownfish's success is inseparable from the stability of its host and the surrounding reef. As coral and anemone populations fluctuate, so too does the distribution of clownfish. The partnership that redefined its ecological role also constrains its adaptability. At the sensory level, the clownfish's bright coloration, often interpreted as advertisement, operates within the protective context of the anemone. Its orange and white bands contrast sharply against the tentacles, yet predators are discouraged from pursuing such conspicuous targets because of the associated risk. The coloration may function in intraspecific communication, reinforcing social hierarchies within the group. What appears flamboyant is buffered by environmental armor. The final reversal lies in perception. The clownfish is frequently portrayed as emblematic of innocence, a small fish with bold colors navigating a vibrant reef. In ecological terms, it is a strategic opportunist embedded within a chemically defended stronghold. It does not ignore biological law. It rewrites its relationship to it through partnership and adaptation. The lethal boundary that governs other fish becomes for it a living wall. Within the anemone's tentacles, the clownfish hovers, its fins making minute adjustments to maintain position amid constant current. Around it, the reef pulses with predation and competition. The tentacles sway, armed and ready, indifferent to the fish they shelter. The clownfish does not appear formidable. It does not need to be. It has outsourced its defense to a host whose very touch is catastrophe. The law remains intact. Contact still kills. But for one small fish, the boundary has been redrawn and the reef reorganizes around that exception. The mouth opens wide enough to swallow a human and nothing flees. A wall of water slides forward, and with it a cavernous gape rimmed in rough dermal denticles and framed by a head broader than most reef outcrops. Smaller fish part instinctively, their nervous systems trained by evolution to interpret that outline as catastrophe. Yet there is no acceleration, no tightening spiral of pursuit. Instead, the enormous body advances at a measured pace, and the water itself is drawn inward. Plankton, fish eggs, larval crustaceans, microscopic drifters that never evolved to recognize sharks as threats, funnel toward a throat that is not built for tearing flesh, but for sieving it. The largest fish in the ocean feeds, as if it were inhaling dust. The whale shark is a paradox wrapped in cartilage and patterned in pale constellations. Its lineage is anchored firmly within the sharks, a group synonymous with predation, cutting teeth, and acute sensory precision tuned to track blood and struggle. Yet this species has taken that ancestral blueprint and redirected it toward an entirely different ecological function. Instead of using speed and serrated dentition to disassemble large prey, it filters immense volumes of seawater, extracting organisms so small that they are nearly invisible without magnification. The mismatch between body and behavior destabilizes expectation at every scale. Its size alone commands attention, reaching lengths that rival small vessels. The whale shark carries a mass that would typically support a high-energy predatory lifestyle. In most large sharks, bulk correlates with dominance in the food web, a capacity to subdue large vertebrates and exert top-down pressure on ecosystems. The whale shark subverts this narrative. It occupies a trophic level more commonly associated with modestly sized fish, feeding primarily on plankton and small nekton. This inversion transforms the meaning of gigantism in the marine context. Instead of being a weapon of force, its size becomes an instrument of throughput. The feeding mechanism itself is an engineering solution to abundance rather than scarcity. The whale shark swims with its mouth open, allowing water to flow in and across specialized filtering structures composed of cartilaginous pads and gill rakers. These structures trap particles while expelling excess water through the gill slits. The efficiency of this system is not measured in the capture of single prey items, but in the cumulative processing of thousands upon thousands of organisms suspended in the water column. The shark does not hunt individuals. It harvests density. This strategy aligns with the ecological reality of plankton-rich zones, where productivity surges due to upwelling, nutrient input, or seasonal blooms. In such regions, the ocean becomes a soup of microscopic life, and the whale shark's feeding behavior resembles that of a mobile filtration plant. By targeting areas of high plankton concentration, it maximizes energetic return relative to effort. The metabolic constraint is clear. Sustaining such a massive body requires a continuous intake of calories, and the only feasible way to achieve this without constant high-speed pursuit is to exploit sheer abundance. The narrative reversal deepens when examining its sensory world. While many predatory sharks rely heavily on electroreception and acute olfactory detection of injured prey, the whale shark's sensory priorities are shifted toward locating patches of high plankton density. Visual cues, temperature gradients, and possibly chemical signals associated with plankton blooms guide its movements across vast oceanic distances. Satellite tracking has revealed migrations spanning entire basins, indicating a capacity to integrate environmental information over large spatial scales. The shark is not roaming aimlessly. It is navigating a dynamic map of productivity. Despite its gentleness toward larger organisms, the whale shark is not defenseless. Its skin is thick and reinforced with dermal denticles, providing protection against parasites and minor abrasions. Remoras and other fish often accompany it, forming a moving micro-community that benefits from both shelter and feeding opportunities created by the shark's movement. This aggregation of species around a single individual underscores its role as a mobile ecosystem. The whale shark is not merely a solitary giant. It is habitat in motion. The ecological twist emerges when considering its position in the broader marine network. Although it does not exert the direct predatory pressure of other large sharks, its consumption of plankton can influence local food webs. By removing vast quantities of microscopic organisms, it participates in nutrient cycling and energy redistribution. In areas where multiple whale sharks aggregate, their feeding activity can alter plankton composition and density, subtly reshaping the base of the food web. The gentle filterer becomes an agent of structural change. Reproduction introduces another layer of complexity that remains partially obscured by the species' elusive nature. Whale sharks are ovoviviparous, with embryos developing inside eggs retained within the mother's body until hatching. This reproductive mode balances protection and dispersal, allowing young sharks to enter the ocean at a relatively advanced stage. The rarity of observed mating and pupping events highlights the challenges of studying such a wide-ranging species. Much of its life history unfolds beyond direct observation, reinforcing its aura of quiet enormity. The final reversal lies in perception. The word shark carries with it a cultural weight shaped by narratives of aggression and danger. The whale shark's anatomy reinforces that expectation. A massive mouth, rows of small teeth, a body plan associated with predation. Yet its behavior contradicts the archetype. It does not stalk seals or patrol reefs in search of wounded fish. It glides through plankton blooms with an almost mechanical calm, converting microscopic life into the energy required to sustain its immense frame. This dissonance between form and function reveals a broader truth about marine identity. Evolution does not adhere to human categories. A body can be built from the blueprint of an apex predator and repurposed into a filter feeder without losing coherence. The whale shark's gigantism is not an expression of dominance in the conventional sense. It is an adaptation to scale, allowing the exploitation of diffuse resources that would be insufficient for smaller filter feeders to support such mass. As it moves through sunlit surface waters, its spotted pattern refracts light in a way that disrupts its outline, providing a subtle camouflage against the shifting backdrop of the ocean. Beneath it, plankton blooms rise and fall with currents and seasons, ephemeral surges of productivity that dictate the shark's migratory routes. Above it, seabirds may circle, feeding on the same concentrations of life that draw the giant upward. The whale shark becomes a nexus where vertical layers of the ocean intersect. There is no frenzy in its feeding, no violent choreography of pursuit. There is only the steady rhythm of movement and filtration, a process repeated over hours and days as the shark traverses nutrient-rich corridors. In a world where size often signals threat, the whale shark stands as a living contradiction, a creature whose magnitude amplifies gentleness rather than aggression. The ocean accommodates both archetype and anomaly. The whale shark embodies both at once, wearing the silhouette of a predator while practicing the patience of a grazer. The mouth closes, the water is expelled, and the giant continues forward, harvesting the invisible abundance that sustains it. In that slow passage, the meaning of shark is quietly rewritten. The strike never lands because the target dissolves into something that should not be attacked. A predator closes the distance with the confidence of recognition, its nervous system primed to convert a familiar outline into a predictable outcome. The shape ahead is soft, slow, and exposed, an easy decision in a world where hesitation wastes energy. Then the outline fractures. Arms extend, flatten, and reconfigure in a motion that is not escape but transformation. The body elongates, the color shifts into alternating bands, and the movement changes from drifting uncertainty to deliberate sinuous propulsion. What was prey becomes, in a single continuous action, the visual signature of a venomous organism that the predator has learned to avoid at all costs. The attack collapses before it begins, not because the octopus outran danger, but because it rewrote the meaning of its own body faster than the predator could commit. The mimic octopus exists in an environment where identity is currency, and misclassification is fatal. In the sediment-rich shallows and soft-bottom habitats it occupies, visual cues dominate the interaction between species. Predators rely on rapid pattern recognition to distinguish between edible and dangerous targets, compressing complex sensory information into immediate behavioral responses. Most organisms optimize their survival by refining a single identity, becoming faster, harder, more toxic, or more cryptic within a fixed framework. The mimic octopus rejects this constraint entirely. It operates not as a single solution, but as a library of possibilities, each one deployed in response to a specific context. Its body is built for this flexibility at the level of both structure and control. Unlike vertebrates constrained by rigid skeletons, the octopus possesses a hydrostatic system in which muscles act against incompressible fluids, allowing for near-infinite deformation. Each arm functions as a semi-autonomous unit, capable of complex movements independent of centralized control. This distributed nervous system enables rapid, coordinated transformations that would be impossible in organisms with more hierarchical neural architectures. When the mimic octopus alters its form, it is not executing a simple reflex. It is orchestrating a multi-layered behavioral program that integrates sensory input, memory, and motor control in real time. The skin itself is an active interface with the environment, equipped with chromatophores, iridophores, and leucophores that can change color, reflectivity, and pattern with remarkable precision. These changes are not random displays but targeted signals designed to replicate the visual characteristics of specific species. When the octopus mimics a venomous sea snake, it adopts not only the coloration, but also the undulating movement pattern that defines that organism's presence. When it flattens itself against the substrate to resemble a flatfish, it alters both its posture and its locomotion, gliding along the seafloor in a way that aligns with the expectations of observers. The ecological twist emerges in the strategic selection of these identities. The mimic octopus does not randomly cycle through forms. It chooses based on the type of threat it faces. For example, when confronted by predators that are deterred by venomous species, it adopts the appearance of those species, exploiting learned avoidance behaviors. In other contexts, it may mimic less threatening organisms to approach prey without triggering escape responses. This is not passive camouflage. It is active deception, a form of behavioral plasticity that transforms the octopus into a moving signal tailored to manipulate the perceptions of others. This strategy reveals a deeper layer of complexity in the interaction between predator and prey. Traditional models often frame these relationships as arms races of physical traits. Speed versus speed, armor versus force. The mimic octopus operates on a different axis entirely. engaging in what can be described as a cognitive arms race. It exploits the decision-making processes of other organisms, targeting the neural shortcuts that allow for rapid classification. By presenting conflicting or misleading information, it disrupts these processes, creating hesitation or avoidance where none would otherwise exist. The cost of this strategy is not trivial. Maintaining the neural and muscular systems required for such flexibility demands significant energy and developmental investment. Additionally, the effectiveness of mimicry depends on the presence of species that serve as models. If the organisms being mimicked are absent or rare, the signal loses its meaning and the deception fails. This ties the mimic octopus to a broader ecological network, where its survival is linked to the diversity and abundance of other species. It is not merely adapted to its environment, it is dependent on the informational landscape created by that environment. The narrative reverses again when considering the limitations of mimicry. While the octopus can replicate the appearance and movement of other species, it cannot replicate all aspects of their biology. A predator that relies on multiple sensory modalities, such as chemical detection or tactile cues, may penetrate the illusion. In such cases, the octopus must rely on additional defenses, including rapid escape or the release of ink, to obscure its position. The mimicry is therefore not an absolute shield, but a probabilistic strategy, increasing the likelihood of survival without guaranteeing it. This probabilistic nature highlights the importance of timing and context. The success of a given mimicry depends on the predator's prior experiences, the clarity of the signal, and the speed at which the transformation occurs. A delay of even a fraction of a second could result in the predator committing to an attack before the illusion is complete. The octopus must therefore operate within tight temporal constraints, executing its transformations with precision and speed. This requirement shapes its behavior, favoring individuals that can rapidly assess threats and deploy appropriate responses. At the level of ecosystem dynamics, the mimic octopus introduces a layer of complexity that extends beyond individual interactions. By altering the behavior of predators and prey, it influences patterns of movement and feeding within its habitat. Predators that encounter mimics may become more cautious, adjusting their strategies in ways that affect other species. Similarly, prey organisms that are deceived by the octopus contribute to its energy intake, linking it to the broader flow of nutrients within the system. These interactions create feedback loops that can shape the structure and function of the ecosystem over time. Reproduction in the mimic octopus follows a more conventional cephalopod pattern, with females laying eggs and often providing care until they hatch. However, even here, the theme of vulnerability and transformation persists. The reproductive phase is a period of increased risk, as the focus shifts from feeding and avoidance to the protection of offspring. The female's ability to maintain camouflage and respond to threats becomes critical, as any failure could result in the loss of an entire nestle of potential individuals. This underscores the delicate balance between survival and reproduction, a balance that is constantly negotiated in a dynamic environment. The sensory world of the mimic octopus is rich and multidimensional. Its eyes provide detailed visual information, while its arms are equipped with chemoreceptors that allow it to taste and feel its surroundings. This combination of senses enables a nuanced understanding of the environment, supporting the complex decision-making required for effective mimicry. The octopus does not simply react to stimuli. It interprets them, integrating multiple sources of information to determine the most appropriate response. The broader implication of the mimic octopus's strategy is a challenge to the concept of fixed identity in biological systems. Most organisms are defined by a set of stable traits that determine their role within an ecosystem. The mimic octopus, by contrast, operates as a fluid entity, capable of shifting between roles as needed. This flexibility allows it to occupy a unique niche, one that is defined not by a single function, but by the ability to adapt to changing conditions. As the sediment settles and the immediate threat passes, the octopus relaxes its transformed posture, its body returning to a more neutral state. The arms retract, the patterns fade, and the animal resumes its slow, deliberate movement across the sea floor. It is once again an ambiguous presence, neither clearly prey nor clearly predator, existing in a space between categories. This return to ambiguity is not a retreat, but a reset, preparing the octopus for the next interaction in a world where certainty is rare. The final reversal lies in the realization that the mimic octopus is not defined by any single form it takes. Its true identity is the capacity for change itself. In a system where recognition drives behavior, the ability to evade recognition becomes a powerful tool. The octopus does not win by being stronger or faster. It wins by being something else entirely, something that cannot be easily named or predicted. In this way, the mimic octopus becomes a living demonstration of how evolution can operate through flexibility and deception, creating organisms that thrive not by conforming to expectations, but by subverting them. It reveals a dimension of survival that is as much about information and perception as it is about physical traits, a dimension where the boundaries between species blur and the rules of engagement are constantly rewritten.